Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Hello, and welcome to the Technically Friends podcast, hosted by Harrison Wolf and Timothy Reuter. My name is Harrison, and I wanted to find a way to highlight the amazing people I've met throughout my life who are, without exception, all smarter, harder working, and better looking than me. They're folks with deep expertise in some aspect of the technology industry and who continue to achieve success in their field as key players across sectors and companies, or even launching their own efforts to drive positive change.
And I'm Timothy. In general, the people we speak with are on their way up. Not the well-established C-suite, but the new executive, the director who is navigating their career, or the youngish visionary founding startups from the ground up. We're tired of only hearing from the people who made it, and we really wanted to highlight the people who are still dealing with the challenges of bureaucracy, politics, home life, and global influences. If we do this right, it will be as if you're listening in on a meaningful conversation between three work friends, talking about the more interesting aspects of life, the universe, and everything.
And once again, we're joined by someone who Timothy and I met while working at the World Economic Forum, Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco just a few years ago. For those unfamiliar with this societally conscious, technologically focused center, it brought together experts and community members from across AI, cryptocurrency, precision medicine, autonomous vehicles, drones, and the Internet of Things. And while the singular center has expanded into a network of centers across the globe, and the number of individuals driving meaningful change continues to expand, Timothy and I have the privilege of drawing upon a very close, small community of folks from our time there who accomplished more in just a few years than I could have ever imagined.
Today's guest joins us from the Fintech and stablecoin world of cryptocurrency and has become one of the leading voices of international financial technology, although also technology in general, consulting central banks from across the globe on blockchain, stablecoin, and other cryptocurrency topics. If you don't know what a CBDC is, it's not the same as CBD, a central bank digital currency, or why it matters. Today's guest, the incomparable Ashley Lannquist, is perfect for you. And if you want to know how a young Berkeley student who hadn't ever heard of fintech before became a global voice on the topic in just a few years, you'll hear that too. Ashley, we're excited to chat today. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for recording on your family vacation.
Thank you. Very nice to speak with you all.
Fantastic. Ashley, it's been a while. It's been great to follow your journeys across the globe. You know, you started with us in San Francisco in terms of, when we all met, but what have you been up to recently? And what is sort of your expertise? I could try to explain sort of cryptocurrency or stablecoin or blockchain or distributed ledger, but I wouldn't do nearly as good a job as you. What are you up to? Like, what could you explain this confusing world to us?
Very nice to speak with you all. Thanks again for having me. So when I joined the WEF with you all in 2018, I joined the blockchain team, and we were doing policy projects around blockchain, working with governments and the public and private sector. And I was doing some cryptocurrency work. And I was also working on something called central bank digital currency that you mentioned, CBDC, not CBD, although nothing against CBD. I've been more focused on that in the past several years, and more than cryptocurrency itself. So what central bank digital currency is it's not cryptocurrency. It's very different. It could operate on a private blockchain, but it doesn't have to. There are a lot of trade-offs associated with using blockchain, so it could very much also be developed on traditional centralized ledger tech. But what this is it's the central banks allowing everyday people and businesses to have direct retail accounts with it. So like a direct debit account where you keep some money, a couple $1,000s in an account at the central bank directly. That's what central bank digital currency is. It's novel because that doesn't otherwise exist. Normally we keep our money in banks, right? And this would be at the central bank, and it comes with some benefits. It has no credit risk since it's at the central bank. The central bank doesn't have a profit motive. So it could be cheaper in some environments as well. It could complement existing private sector offerings for payments and savings. But there's a lot of nuances here. So we could talk about all of these use cases and the policy goals or trade offs, downsides. And I cover that topic from the economic and the tech perspective.
It seems like, in one way, CBDC, or a centralized version of these networks or a private network, is very similar to what exists today in private banking, where the banking like, you have sort of a centralized owner or authority that maintains the ledger, maintains sort of the transaction, which doesn't seem that transformative versus something that's distributed in nature and run from peer to peer. Or am I missing
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, perhaps from a technical level, it doesn't seem as transformative, right? The CBDC, this is similar to the tech is similar to the current financial system as you're talking about. I would say economically, it could be beneficial that the public sector, that the central bank, this doesn't exist yet. I mean, it didn't prior to this concept in the modern world, where we could have accounts at the central bank. There's no credit risk. It's the central bank can print the money. The money's going to be there. If there's a banking collapse, the money's going to be there.
Mhm.
And so it's more this economic novelty. So today, central banks, they print us money that we use, but it's physical cash only. The physical cash is the direct liability of the central bank. That's the only money that we have right now that's the direct liability of the central bank. We use money that's held with commercial banks. So now we're using less cash in the world. Everyone is using less cash, most countries. How does the central bank maintain its commitment to ensure safe payments and inclusive payments that everyone in the country can use if people aren't using physical cash as much? And should it be the case that we must rely on the private sector for the provision of all of our payments and savings, right?
That's an
Couldn't it be
interesting question.
beneficial for the public sector to guarantee and provide this public option, even if people don't really use it? Some people don't want to use this because they might not trust the central bank, or they have privacy challenges, or they don't find a purpose in their day-to-day life, and that's all fair. But this option can exist that the central bank simply makes available for people if they want to. And not only does it provide a secondary resilient system, but it provides competition to the banking sector and the private sectors. Our bank accounts today, they pay us very little on our money deposits, right? They pay us very little because they're not competitive with each other in the market for bank deposits. They can just get away with paying us that little. Central bank digital currency can be available to us, and it could pay an interest rate that's 1%, that's 2%. Now, wouldn't we be more attracted by that? Plus, it has no credit risk. So that provides a viable alternative option for us. So to keep some savings, that could then pressure the commercial banks to finally have to increase their deposit rates to be more competitive, which is not only good for households on an individual level, because now we get paid more by these banks because of the competitive pressure of the CBDC, but it's actually better for monetary policy. And I'm sorry to go on a bit of a tangent here, but central banks set policy rates as part of their monetary policy. They want to stimulate the economy or tighten it up to control inflation and growth. And they set an interest rate, a policy interest rate to do that. Right now, it's around 4% in the US. That doesn't get sent to households as quickly because the banks basically like keep the profits, and they're only paying us 0.15%, not 4%,
Right.
because the banks are keeping that profit, net interest margin. Um, i- and if the banks actually have to pay us deposit rates closer to what the central bank policy rate is, that means that the central bank is pushing out its interest rates to households more effectively, which means that they can manage the economy more effectively. So that's a bit of a tangent, but there are really cool economic implications and opportunities to this.
Well, I'm voting Ashley for the chair of the Fed.
I mean, there may be some new governor roles open soon.
Right. Hopefully not.
Although in the American context, though, don't we usually try to avoid having the public sector compete directly with the private sector, which is what would happen if suddenly the Fed could take deposits directly?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It depends on how competitive the private sector is. If the private sector already has really strong competition, that means their prices are already low such that their profits are pretty low because there's like 10 lemonade stands on the street rather than one lemonade stand or three lemonade stands, right? When there's 10, they're the amount that they charge for the lemonade is going to be really close to the amount that it costs to produce the lemonade, marginal cost. That's a perfectly competitive or highly competitive lemonade stand street. Then the government shouldn't get in there and offer pink lemonade at cheaper. If it offered pink lemonade now for cheaper than the yellow lemonade, then that's not going to be beneficial for public welfare, for the street, because it's going to put out of business the regular lemonade sellers from the private sector. And
Yeah.
then we have fewer options and they lose jobs. And the street population doesn't benefit. But if there's only like three or one
Yeah.
lemonade stand and they're making a lot of profit and they're getting away with like diluting the lemonade. They're really getting away with a lot.
Yeah.
The customer service is bad because they don't have enough competition. That's when a new pink lemonade by the government could play a role and that would improve the welfare of the lemonade situation on the street. So when I left the World Economic Forum, I went to work at the International Monetary Fund. And when I was at the WEF, I was like this one person show doing CBDC. It was a very new topic at that time in 2018. And so I was covering the tech and the economic aspects. We were one person at the WEF doing this. Now the topic has grown and the IMF has an extremely well-resourced team on this topic. So I went to the IMF and I went to being like a small fish in a big pond, but I preferred that because I was around a lot of experts who do this as well. So at the IMF, I was focused on CBDC as well, and also on the tech and economic side. I had a rare dual appointment onto two teams. And what we were doing was advising central banks around the world on this topic. So a bit more applied, working even more directly with the central banks than I was previously and thinking through with them whether this made sense. We were not always recommending it. Rather, we were neutrally teaching them about this concept and the benefits it could have, also the risks that it could have, and how to design it in a way that could meet the central bank's goals. So that's what I was doing at the IMF. I was there for 3.5 years. And as I was leaving, I started to work a little bit on another adjacent topic called fast payment systems. This is more established in the world. It exists in dozens and dozens of countries already. Zelle, we have in the United States. We have a new one called FedNow as well. A lot of other countries have this already. So it's basically in your bank account, you get the money instantly when it's sent to you, as opposed to having to wait a couple days to get it into your bank account once it's sent. So that's useful. It's useful to get your money faster. But there's also some kind of nuances to this. And what I'm doing in my new role, I'm starting at a new organization, and I'll be working on that a little bit more full time.
Yeah, part of what we always try and get into, on these podcasts is both, our guests' expertise, and you're a deep expert in a lot of these topics, but also what people are learning along the way as they're formulating their careers. So I'd be curious to hear, what did you feel like you learned from being at the forum, right? As you mentioned, you're in an environment without a lot of other people with expertise in this particular topic, but you're also in an environment that has a lot of access of a certain kind. So I'd be curious to hear, what role do you feel like the forum played in the things that you did there in your personal journey on these areas?
I do think we learned a lot about this multi-stakeholder project management. So we were really working with the top governments and the top private sector and civil society and academics and co-designing tech policy projects with them. And I do think I have brought some of those lessons. Not only did I develop communication and leadership and project management skills, but for instance, at the IMF, I was starting a new project, and one of my instincts was to book the Innovation Lab space in the building in Washington, D.C., and host a workshop with. It was kind of internal. It was within the IMF. We also had World Bank guests and Inter-American Development Bank guests. But I wanted to workshop ideas with them at the very
Yeah.
start of the project to set its direction, to learn from the real experts, and make sure that what we develop solves a real need and has a real
Mhm.
goal and would be useful to people. I do think that those project management, early scoping, early workshop input skills are quite useful in the world for our type of field.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of the things that I also got from the forum is this belief in community building as a way to instantiate change. So it's interesting to hear that you had that same experience.
My experience was very similar, right? Like a expert, like a very specific expert in my silo of knowledge, and being exposed to just some of the smartest, most interesting people I've ever met. Present company included in that. And it's always interesting to me to hear how some folks got there. I mean, you had a traditional like Ivy League background, people who went and did research. You had a lot of folks who did work overseas and then came from more of a political policy background. And then I think there were folks like you who were involved in these very nascent technologies who had just thrown themselves into it. And your stories I always found probably the most interesting. And so I was just wondering, could you sort of tell us how you got into the fintech world? Like, was it something you had thought about, you've dreamt up as a little girl? Like, I want to help blockchain, emerge as a technology to transform the universe? Or like, how'd that happen? I know you were at Berkeley for a bit right before the WEF, but could you talk a little bit about that?
To be a computer game designer when I was actually a 12-year-old.
That's amazing.
Now I play a lot of Assassin's Creed and Civ 6. But to go back to your
Oh,
question,
Why haven't you
I
upgraded to Civ 7 yet? That's my main. I'm
I
sorry to interrupt, but
it
Civ
has
7
mixed
is amazing.
reviews. Do you like
Oh, I
it?
really liked it. I prefer it. Yeah.
I've
Okay,
played a little
good.
Civ 7 and enjoyed it as well. So recommended from two of the hosts.
Sorry, go
Okay,
ahead. I
good.
didn't mean to cut you off.
I met the designers on an airplane once. They had the Fraxis, like, sweatshirts on, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait, tell me about Civ 7."
Amazing.
They were the people that designed the units, and the
Cool.
city, the graphic. Okay, going back to this. So, I was working in traditional finance. I was working in asset management, fixed income, and bonds. I studied hard to get a CAIA certification, which is the
Hmm.
CFA, Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst. So I was in investments, on the helping pension funds invest in bonds, and then I was at a party of MIT MBA students with my sister in graduate school. She was in Harvard Kennedy School of Government, so there was a party in Cambridge, Boston, and MIT had the first fintech club, the MBA program. And I was talking to the founders. They were the founding class at the time. It's 2015, and they said, "Yeah, we started this fintech club." And I said, "Wait, what is that? What is fintech?" And they said, "It's financial tech, so it's user focused, payment apps, investment apps, insure tech. Like it's tech." More tech focused finance. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Why don't we all just do that? Like, why don't I just do that?" I was in my late 20s. It sounded so much more exciting. It was energizing. It was in the tech areas of New York and Silicon Valley. I
Hmm.
liked how relatable it was to consumers, to me, to everyone. I got into robo advisors because I was coming from asset management. So I was an early adopter of like Wealthfront, for instance. You might have heard of Wealthfront or Betterment. So I
Yep.
started to use
Hmm.
these, and then I was applying to business school at that exact time, and I decided to focus on this full time. So I got into two business schools, and I was choosing between them, and went to Berkeley. Chose to go to Berkeley. I wanted to have a lifestyle change, to move out to California and be in Silicon Valley, and there was no fintech club yet. So as soon as even before I got to campus, I was already talking with the current rising second years. I got connected to them, and we decided to found the fintech club. And so we did that, and I was the first co-president. I was the co-president for 3 semesters. I will say the reason I'm mentioning this, even though we've all done many, I have done more things since then, but I do think that this fintech club at Berkeley ended up being like my first meaningful professional leadership experience that I'm really proud of,
Hmm.
and where I learned a lot in fintech. I was at the podium introducing guest speakers. I was reading. I was learning. I was organizing events, and I really enjoyed that. And then at that same time at Berkeley, Berkeley has the largest, and it was just starting, student blockchain club. These were like genius computer science people who were mining Bitcoin since 2014, and they started this like blockchain. It's called Blockchain at Berkeley, the largest student club in the country on this. And I just thought tech was really interesting. So I
Hmm.
started to learn about it. I read a computer science textbook on blockchain technology that came out. It's like called the Princeton Bitcoin Technology, something like that. And I still recommend that textbook to everyone. So I was really trying to study it. I took a student-led class by these undergrads on this topic and just really tried to learn about it. Crypto prices were not going anywhere, right? It wasn't about chasing money. It
Hmm.
was I found it intellectually interesting. And
Hmm.
so I got really into it. And my other MBA classmates were doing internships at established companies that summer. And I didn't. I took there were no first of all, there were no business internships in blockchain at that time. So I spent the summer reading more, going to conferences and learning about blockchain. And the crypto prices were just starting to rise at that time. So I had made enough of what an MBA internship would have paid. So that gave me confidence for the summer. And I wrote some Medium articles on this were, I think, some of the first ones that were translating blockchain into layperson terms at the time. So they now have like 200,000 views on them. And at the
Wow.
time, they were being viewed a lot, like 150,000 views
Hmm.
that year. So people were resonating with this and trying to learn it. And then I just kept on going with that stuff. So I wanted to focus on blockchain after MBA, and then that's when I came to the WEF. And I do think I think overall it's about me being curious and interested in this topic and like hustling and like teaching myself about it and networking
Yeah.
and the energy that comes with that these WEF jobs, they were hard to get. And remember, our project teams only had one project lead. Harrison, you were the project lead on the drones team with
Yeah.
Timothy, and our blockchain team, we were the first team to have two project leads because it was hard to be like we were so competitive for those roles that
Hmm.
yeah, I think we brought a lot to the table, and our manager wanted to hire both me and my colleague Nadia, we remain lifelong friends. But it comes with like having that. I had a strong network and a lot of strong knowledge from the hustle and like genuine curiosity and energy that comes when you're passionate about something.
So just to track this a little, it took you about, say, is it 3 or 4 years from meeting a bunch of people at a party, talking about something you'd never heard of before, to advising countries about how to implement this in their governmental context.
Yeah,
Is that
I
right?
guess so. Maybe in 2019 we started working with central banks at the WEFs 3.5 or 4 years. These topics were very new, right? So
Yeah.
you could learn you could spend your I mean I was spending my weekends learning about this topic, and that's actually something I wanted to say in this
Hmm.
podcast. But it takes time to learn about this topic, and sometimes you have to
Hmm.
you have to read a lot and self-teach, and that's the only way that you develop the expertise. And you have to remain open-minded and learn and read and talk to people. And when I talk to people, they ask me advice for how to get to the WEF or to the IMF or to develop specialty in a certain area. I'm always recommending reading and really taking the time to learn something. And I do think we kind of need those real experts in the world. And now AI is booming. And I
Hmm.
think people need to really like study and learn about AI if they're going to be talking about it and trying to break into it. So I hope they do.
I'd actually like to dive just a little deeper on this because I love your story and I actually very much relate to it. Sort of, in some sense, you hit it at the right time. And I had the same experience with drones where I got interested in it before a lot of people were focused on this and
Hmm.
then built a community that I led that allowed me to get visibility broadly. And I think that, obsessive immersion and just trying to do what you can opportunistically is very powerful. That being said, these ecosystems around blockchain, around drones, around AI are now much larger and more competitive. So I'm not sure, is there anything different about what you would advise people to do who are starting now, where there are established institutions and companies that you can intern for? For somebody who's sort of, in their early 20s right now, maybe considering going to graduate school, or, maybe they shouldn't, what would you recommend for them if they want to break into this world of blockchain and cryptocurrency and central bank digital currency?
Fintech, and it's a good question. I mean, I'm also happy to hear what you guys think because this isn't where I was cutting my teeth as you mentioned. I think like still there's the self-study and the proactiveness, not waiting for opportunities to come to you.
Yeah.
not waiting for on-campus recruiting. I didn't do on-campus
Mm.
recruiting, whereas my classmates all were. I was the only one of the only ones not. I was going into San Francisco and I was doing my own networking. And I was networking with the undergrads who were more relevant to
Hmm.
my network. And I started the first executive education in-person course in the world on blockchain. It was
Wow.
at Berkeley. It was at Berkeley Law with the undergrads, with a senior, the president of the
Wow.
Blockchain at Berkeley Club. We took it to the business school first. We pitched it. We said we think executives are going to be interested in this blockchain thing. We have the expertise to teach it. I can organize it. These computer science guys, the president of the club will he's more of an expert than anyone, will teach it. Business school turned it down because they didn't think it was viable enough, which was my school, my department. And then we took it to the
Hmm.
law school, and there was a really forward thinking guy named Adam Sterling there who sponsored it with us. And then the program got so successful that the dean, what I hear is that the deans of the two schools had to like negotiate over which department would take it over. And
Wow.
the business school was confused, and they asked me why I didn't bring it to the business school, and I said that I did.
Mhm.
Um, okay, where am I going with this? I think that these small stepping stones, the other piece of advice is that I do think small stepping stones build or snowball, and like
Yeah.
this small snowballs build up into bigger career moves. That's why I mentioned the Fintech Club and why I'm mentioning these were my initial activities along with teaching and myself and learning, that I think little by little you get to where you are. So you don't, and I think that could be helpful for young people. It might look like a long road ahead to advising central banks on a topic that you're just learning about now, but a little bit of experience building gradually with projects, like hands-on projects out in the world, or writing a blog articles or wherever is relevant in social media in the world, and reading and trying to actually develop content expertise are still useful lessons.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. You brought up social media, and I think I think you were sort of in a generation that was a little younger than Timothy and mine, and I'm younger than Timothy. I just want to make that very clear. But, I think you used social media in a way while we were at WEF and even beyond that, that was very effective. And it was the first time I'd seen it be used to really advance project work, to advance your career. And so I was wondering, if you have any thoughts on how social media has played an influence in your rise, or, any tips or strategies that you think might be useful to others, because you have not been afraid to get into Twitter fights, if I remember correctly. You always came off sounding intelligent, expert, but also, somebody who could meet confrontation. And I was wondering, how you think about that, how you think about social media as a way to incorporate into your career.
Thanks for the compliment. I think that does feel a little bit far away from me right now because I toned down, like, the crypto social media space has gotten really challenging since when I was
Mhm.
writing those posts. You used to be able to like dissent and
Mm.
raise counterpoints, and I had to close down my Twitter because I had like I had thousands of followers, sub under 10,000, but I had followers, but I still closed down my account because I didn't think that I could speak about things. I wanted to remind people about the environmental impact of Bitcoin. Okay, people talked about this in
Mhm.
the past. We've heard about it. Then this exchange traded product, ETFs, came out to trade underlying Bitcoin products for retail investors. That means I believe that these ETFs are buying Bitcoin with every transaction when customers buy the ETFs. So this was big news in the beginning of 2024. I wanted to remind people that, hey, remember when you buy these ETFs, there is an environmental impact. You should just be aware. Like, make your
Mhm.
decisions with knowledge, right? Sure, it's really just Bitcoin that has this major problem. I'm not saying all cryptocurrency, and there are some workarounds, but I wanted to remind people. And I provided some statistics, which is that one Bitcoin transaction is the CO2 energy entails the CO2 energy footprint of a single economy class flight seat across the
Huh.
country from San Francisco to New York. And that continues to be the case today. About 750 kilograms CO2 equivalent output. Anyways, so I got 50,000 impressions in 3 hours, 50 quote retweets, like 100 comments, and they were all 99% were like critical of me, ad hominem attacks, just for criticizing Bitcoin, right? So
Wow.
there was one good content negative criticism of me that was like a good criticism. The rest of it was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like they just assume that I don't know technically what I'm talking about, I guess. And that's the defense to not no defense, no like response based off the logic of my argument. Anyways, so I stopped doing that as much. But I appreciate your comment from the time, and let me go back to that now. I do think today still there's a lot of people on social media posting about stablecoins and cryptocurrency. And stablecoins are, for everyone out there, are a price stabilized cryptocurrency. So 99 or more percent of them are based on pegged to the US dollar. So it's a way to hold cryptocurrency, but it's stabilized to the US dollar. You could basically like keep your money in there in between trading, or keep that in a decentralized finance account, but it's still in this cryptocurrency form. So this is a hot topic, and there's people who write about it, but they don't always have the nuance or accuracy. So if I do see that, sometimes I try to comment to try to correct that or provide a little bit more perspective or the other side of the story on something. So I try to do that. I think like in general, we need more accuracy in what we read and on social media. And because I have expertise on this space, I'm able to identify when something isn't accurate or where
Hmm.
it's missing a nuance or the other side of the story. But I don't have that expertise in any other field. So I don't get it in AI. I don't get it in any other field, really, right? And I only hope that what I'm reading is accurate, but I think we all just need to have some filter of accuracy and hold ourselves up to the standard of making sure that whatever we're writing is accurate
Yeah.
out there.
As you're making this leap from the IMF to, whatever it is you're doing next, how do you evaluate these like career moves? Are you at all
Right.
nervous about changing from public sector? I think you mentioned you're going into the private sector, but I would love to hear your thought process a bit on some of these like transformative moves you're making currently.
Okay, sure. I do think every year that I have experience, I get a little bit more confident. I loved going to the WEF. I loved working in international organizations. I like that the organization I'm going to, it's a payments focused management consulting firm, is working with the public sector, with central banks, and helping them, just as I was with the IMF, develop inclusive national payment infrastructure and systems that serve society. So I think that I've sort of, to answer your question, come around to finding this niche where I like helping the public sector improve its payment systems, which improves the welfare of the public there. Because it's better for everyone if we can send safe, cheap transactions and payments. It's safer for people, and they save their own money and they manage their cash flows better, especially people in lower middle income countries.
I'd actually like to talk a little bit about that and the narrative around cryptocurrency right now, which I'd say, there's a feeling amongst some people that a lot of cryptocurrency activity is about scams and corruption. About 70% of any money put into Trump coins goes straight to their family without creating any obvious value other than currying favor with the most powerful man in the world. How should we think about sort of the balance of the potential benefits of crypto versus these concerns about it being a bit of a wild west of, frankly, scams and corruptions? Or do you not agree? I think that's sort of just a small portion of what's going on and is blown up too much in people's minds.
Well, I do want to point out that what I was referring to, what I do, it's not cryptocurrency, just for the listeners, just to be
Sure.
extra
Thank you
clear.
for clarifying that. Yeah.
I'm working on non-cryptocurrency, on fast payment systems, which is a way for the banks to get money, or banks and mobile money to let end recipients receive their money instantly when transactions are made, like Zelle in the US and FedNow and other countries have them too. And CBDC is not a cryptocurrency. I do think cryptocurrency itself, about 1% of transactions are illegal and illicit. It's about $50 billion a year globally that's known, and the figures that I'm quoting are from Chainalysis, which is a top organization that runs an annual crypto crime report. So every year
And
there's
can
about
you
like
just quickly compare that to, for regular currency? I mean, 1%, is it a higher percentage for bank transactions or, using regular currency? So is that higher or lower than just what is the norm right now for currency? Or don't you know?
20 don't know. It would be like single digit percentage points in normal currency. Yeah. I don't know the exact comparison, but single digits, the total number would be much higher than 50 billion because there's more money. For me, I don't think that absolves cryptocurrency though, because normal payments are like used for real payments in the economy. Like they have a lot of economic value, even if a couple percentage points are used illegally. These are like cryptocurrency trades for the most part, or balances that are sitting in wallets and funds that are hoping to increase in the value of the cryptocurrency. So it's really, really not being used in any large scale for payments. There is in the order of 20 something billion dollars being laundered every year in this. North Korea hacks about $1 to $2 billion every year. They steal it from Ethereum wallets and they get it and it funds nuclear proliferation. So this is all in the Chainalysis reports. How I would answer your question. And then yeah, so there's definitely sketchy behavior happening that harms people. Ransomware resurged a couple years ago because of cryptocurrency, and people's lives, people like die because of this. Their national healthcare systems have gotten ransomware and then like records were lost. AI is also generating a lot of problems, so I'm not only here to
Sure. That is also
point fingers at cryptocurrency. Gen AI, we're seeing huge increases in fraud from AI generation. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges out there in payments right now.
I get a lot of WhatsApp group invites to some of the hottest cryptocurrency, clubs out there constantly. So I'm sure those aren't scams at all.
I want to ask this sort of a closing question. One more reflection about your journey. There's an impression out there that there aren't that many women, or that it's a very male-dominated field, fintech and crypto especially. I'm curious if you have any reflections on being a woman in this field and what that's like, and is that stereotype true, or is that a misperception?
It's probably true. I mean, I'm sure it's true that there's a lot more men in fintech. I think visibly and in leadership and founders and entrepreneurs and general like employed population in fintech is more male than female. I wouldn't say that I faced challenges or discrimination because of it. And I do think that there are some good women leaders that have always been in this space that I looked up to early on and that were visible. And even if there weren't, it wouldn't have mattered that much to me because, I was welcomed in the communities that I was in. And I think people respect content and professionalism and vision and hard work. And so it hasn't been a particular problem for me.
Great. Do you have any final thoughts to share with the audience about your journey or this topic before we break?
Yeah, I think it's been great to speak with you in this field of fintech, cryptocurrency, CBDC, fast payments, and stable coins, all these. I think one thing that we mentioned, I'll highlight that people should learn the content themselves if they're interested and think independently and read social media posts and company posts independently. Really think critically, think scientifically about what they're reading. Make sure that they have accuracy and in the way that they're thinking, and that's beneficial for you professionally as well as you're learning about the space. And I think we could probably generalize that to all of these frontier tech fields that we're thinking about.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful place to end. And of course, before we wrap up, there's one final question we always ask our guests. I don't know any other way to put it that doesn't expose my heart and my soul, but would you say we are technically friends or work colleagues? How would you frame our relationship here?
We're definitely technically friends. And I'm really glad to have connected with you guys today. Thanks a lot for having me. And I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Fantastic. All the best, Ashley. It was always a pleasure to work with you. Great to catch up. And I'm really looking forward to the next time we can all get together.
Thanks. Likewise.
So great reconnecting with you. And thanks for not being the first guest to break our hearts. Somebody's got to do it eventually. Bye.